All right, seventh graders, here we are with the nervous system. I'm basically going to start the PowerPoint over so you can watch the whole thing so that if your notes were lost or you forgot them, we have kind of a little recap. Where we're going to move from here is you are going to move to communicable disease and do the same thing as the eighth graders to make it a little easier for us to move on the same track going forward with this e-learning experience. And it is a good topic to talk about because the coronavirus is a communicable disease and we are living through a crazy pandemic right now. I hope you're all safe and staying home and healthy. So this will be a kind of online lecture where you can hear me talk about the slides just like we were in class. I'll have the nervous system split up into kind of two chunks so you could listen to one chunk and take a break and get a snack, take a nap, and then come back and listen to the second half. These are just your objectives we already kind of talked about. You should know the functions of the nervous system by the time we're done with this. Identify different parts of the nervous system. We had two big parts that, if you remember, we made this go into, and then we're going to describe ways of protecting our nervous system from injury, which some of us need a little reminder on protecting our brains when playing sports and things like that. So you got it with your groups and you brainstormed and you said what you know about the nervous system. A lot of you knew that it had something to do with the brain, and a lot of you thought and knew that it makes you nervous, which it does have something to do with emotions. So being nervous would be a feeling or emotion. And then what do we want to know? A lot of you want to know more of what it does, what's involved with it, are the eyes part of the nervous system, things like that. So we talked about what the nervous system is. It's the body's control or command center. Your brain's just one part. It sends messages to your whole body. If you see the picture on the right, it's all lit up. Those are all nerves running through, usually along the lines of your muscles and your bones. It controls all of your body's actions and jobs. Parts of the nervous system, these are the two main parts we were talking about, and you should know. The central nervous system includes the brain and spinal cord. And the peripheral nervous system includes any other nerve that connects to that central nervous system, but then branches out to other parts of the body. So if you remember talking about our peripheral nerves, they kind of branch out from the center, which was our central nervous system. So if you think central, being in the center of our body, our brain up at the top, all the way down the spinal cord, peripheral is everything else that branches off with that. The peripheral nervous system sends the information it gathers to the central nervous system. So if I touch something and it's hot, I touch my burner and I didn't realize that my husband was just using it. The peripheral nervous system sends that information to the central nervous system, all the way up to the brain. It examines the information that you've gathered by touching that hot surface, and then it goes back and tells my peripheral nerves how to respond. So if the table's hot, my brain is going to say, you need to move your hand or it's going to burn. But we know that this process happens very, very, very quickly, and we don't hold our hand there as long as it took me to explain that to you. These messages are then carried by these little electrical charges called impulses. So the impulse goes up to the brain, goes back down to the hand and says, move, that's hot. They travel again really fast, 248 miles per hour. That's a lot. The sender and receivers of these transmissions are called neurons. You probably learn more about the neuron in science and what it is made up of, but basically they're just specialized nerve cells that house this feeling or interaction so that I know that the table's hot. So, what are the two parts of our nervous system? Two big parts that you should know. Our CNS and PNS. Your central nervous system, more going into that, it consists of, again, your brain and spinal cord. Your brain is the most complex part of the nervous system, and, probably the most important part also. It contains hundreds of billions of neurons and is responsible for many things, including thoughts, memories, and carrying out certain actions. It's involved with your emotions. So if you said, my nervous system makes me nervous, yeah, absolutely, but every other emotion comes with that too, along with everything you sense. So your sense of smell and your sight, so your eyes are part of your nervous system, and what you hear, and definitely what you touch, It also controls your involuntary processes. So if you remember, involuntary was something that we do not control, like our heartbeat and our respiration. We had 3 types of muscle. We had our cardiac muscle, which was, again, our heart. We had our smooth muscles, which are basically our internal organs, like our stomach, digestive tracts. And then we have our skeletal muscles, which we can control. Just another look at the central nervous system. Again, thinking center of the body is your brain and your spinal cord. We left off talking about different parts of our brain. We have just a couple that I picked out that your book picked out. We don't need to know every single part of the brain. That's a lot, but there's a couple that we can focus on. You have your cerebrum, which is the largest portion of the brain. It controls your senses, movement of your muscles, your thinking, your speech. So this whole big, almost, spongy part of the brain is your cerebrum. And if you remember, we kind of talked about it has different lobes assigned to it. Like the front cortex here could be your occipital lobe. And that is important because it controls vision. Back here, you might have back here has to do with your taste and sense of smell. So maybe if I hit the back of my head really hard, I lose some of my taste buds or some of my sense of smell, because the different lobes of the brain control different things. Different areas would control your thinking and your speech. Different areas would control your motor movement, so your movement of your muscles. So if you had a brain injury, maybe you lose control of your arms or your legs, or maybe you can't speak anymore. The brain is very, very fragile, and depending what part of it is hurt or damaged, you could lose different functions. Your cerebellum, right here, kind of below the cerebrum, the spongy part of the brain, controls balance, posture, and coordination. So if you had something wrong with that, you would have poor balance, probably poor body control, bad posture, and not a lot of coordination. So that helps your body move. Your brain stem controls some important autonomic body functions. If you think of autonomic, it's hard to say. It kind of sounds like automatic. It looks like automatic, and it's easier to say. So things that your body does on its own. Your heartbeat, your breathing, your blood pressure, your digestion. Do we have a little control over some of these? Absolutely. Our heartbeat, if our heartbeat goes crazy high because we're exercising and running, we can slow it down by relaxing, breathing slowly, meditating. We can control our breath, but our body, again, will automatically breathe for us because we cannot stop breathing, and we don't need to think about it. Our body just does it. But can I control holding my breath or taking deep breaths? Absolutely. Blood pressure kind of goes the same with your heartbeat. The higher or faster you get your heartbeat going, the higher your blood pressure is going to be. Remember, we did all of that beautiful heart math, and your resting heart rate should have been somewhere between 65 to 75 beats per minute. And if it was higher than that, you might have a high blood pressure, which is dangerous because that means your heart is working harder than it needs to. And we can't live without our heart. So the stronger it is and the more it gets to rest, the better for us. And then, of course, we don't have to think about digestion. We eat our food and, we think about the chewing portion, which, if you remember from 6th grade health, chewing is the first part of digestion. It starts in the mouth. We control that. And then we swallow and our body kind of takes over from there. So we don't have to think about, our stomach or our intestines absorbing the nutrients. It just does it for us. Your meninges are little membranes that cover the brain and spinal cord. So there's lots of little layers involved with it. And these will come back later when we talk about problems of the nervous system, but the membranes basically just add a little more cushion so that we're less likely to have a substantial injury to our brain or our spinal cord. The spinal cord is a column of nerve tissue. It's about 18 inches long. So here's our spinal cord. Boom, boom, boom. It's protected by the vertebrae bones. In this picture, you can see your bones. They're all stacked on top of each other. You have a lot of them. That makes up your spine. It is also protected by the fluid around it, acting as a shock absorber. Your spinal cord relays messages to and from the brain and the body. So the brain's up here, and the spinal cord's attached to it via that brain stem we looked at, and then everything goes out and comes back in and travels up to the brain, which is that big processing center with all the decision making. This is where I'll pause it, and we'll talk about the peripheral nervous system in the second half of the video. And with that central nervous system, remember, if you were to have a severed spinal cord or injury somewhere to it, you might say, if you had a lower back severing right here, you might lose control of everything below it because those nerves would then be cut off. Or, if someone had an injury up at the neck, maybe everything below that, they lost complete function of their body. So you want to take good care of your spinal cord and your vertebrae. And we'll talk about the peripheral nervous system in the second half of the video.